Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review M3gan. So, this is another one of those smart dolls run amok kind of films. I am to go on and state that M3gan does have some good moments, but it is also a fairly flat film. We focus on two characters that are to be connected to a toy company, because that's kind of where the focus lies in this film, is this toy company. And we have Gemma, who is to have gone on and made the M3gan doll. And we, of course, have Katie, who is to test drive this M3gan doll to see if it is to work out, or eventually they will have to scrap this project. So, we have this movie begin with a commercial. And I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting route. It kind of feels like RoboCop in a way, where RoboCop had some kind of weird scenes and commercials and stuff like that. Like it was kind of like a made-for-TV movie that really is to just be its own thing. But anyways, so as far as commercials go in a film, anyways, we have this movie that is to, of course, be quickly compared to the Child's Play remake, or to also be compared to The Orphan or The Boy. Whereas, kind of The Orphan or The Boy have these kind of like big surprises by the end of them, we have this movie that kind of has somewhat of a big surprise at the end, and does have a pretty good ending. And so it's just at a very just small scale. So with that said, I would go on and state that this movie is okay. And at the end of the day, you can go on and see this movie for absolutely free via a bootleg version on Vidlesy. 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 Which is an app that is to just kind of be of bootleggish like movies and shows and so on and so forth. So, with that said, like, that is a very quick explanation of this whole movie, but yeah, like, it's a very seemingly very thin movie also. We have our movie that is to kind of tell us where it's going, to really have me like feel that I could have expected certain things. And so like the movie doesn't give me anything like really new or refreshing or whatever. It just kind of feels like, okay, like here's another thing just kind of put out there. But so with that said, let's just go on and let's go into that double 5-time territory, and let's just get into spoilers. There isn't much for me to go on and state about this film because it's not much of a film, even though there probably is going to be a lot that I will have to talk about when we actually get into spoilers, but still. So, with that said, let's double 5 this bad boy up. It's about that time, of course, to go again into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. So, at the very beginning of this film, we start out with a commercial, and we have a kid who is to lose their dog because it is to pass away. And so the dad is to tell the girl, it's like, well, hey, I'm going to go on and give you a new pet, the perpetual pet, which we come to find out is to be this kind of head-sized toy that is to kind of look like a Fergie in a lot of ways. And so we have this perpetual pet that is to take pictures, is to have it poop, bizarrely. I don't know why. So, the next thing we see after this commercial is Katie is with her parents in this car, and we come to find that she has this perpetual pet, and it is consistently making these fart jokes. So, we have the mother that is talking about, look, well, hey, like, look, like we're coming up on this hotel really soon. And so we have Katie that is so consumed with this toy, and she of course is feeding the toy, and the toy is consistently farting. So we have both the mother and father that are talking about how the toy was only ever given to Katie via her aunt that was to work at this toy company, and I'm assuming that they were, of course, giving this toy away for free. If to have not have had uh, this girl at least not have to pay for the shipping of the toy. Uh, so we have the father that goes on and tells the mother, it's like, well, hey, like our daughter having to go on and consistently play with this thing, it's like that's just new technology for you. Like consistently having to need to uh, play with this thing nonstop, and to of course have the mother who is trying more and more to have Katie turn down the volume of this pet, and we have Katie who's to tell her mother, it's like, well, I've already turned down the volume enough times. So we have the parents who are to turn to the shoulder of this road because they are to realize that there is to get too much of snow here, and they're waiting for this snow plow. So we have the parents, and especially the dad Ryan, who has stated, it's like, well, how long do you think that we're gonna have to wait here for a snowplow to come by? And so shouldn't we just try to go on and try to continue to figure our way out of here? So it seems that they are not going to wait much longer, because all of a sudden they are to be met with another vehicle of some kind that is to crash into them. And so the next thing we see is a guy named Cole who is to make his way through this toy facility with this box in hand. And so we come to find that this is to be a place where there's a bunch of people that are analyzing these kids playing with these toys and kind of writing things down, like, oh wow, all right. So we have certain people that are kind of showing kids how the toys work, and they're like, oh hey, wow, that's great. So we have Gemma and Tess that are experimenting with some toy, trying to work out some defect of it. And we have Gemma that is telling Tess, is like, why are we even working on this toy? Like, it's a waste. And Tess is like, because it's our job. So we have Cole come in with the like silicone skin that is to be for Megan's face, as this is the one thing that Gemma really wants to focus on and get done here. So we have that all of a sudden, while they're trying to fix some of the facial expressions of Megan, we have a guy barge in named David and his assistant named Kurt, and they can't get into the room because, of course, Gemma and Tess are to have it to where, like, when he's to try to swipe this card, he can't get into the room. So when they finally do get in the room, we have David asking Gemma, what is she doing? Because what she's doing right now with Megan is a waste. And that David is to be very, very upset right now because there is to be a competitor out there that is competing with their best toy, and it's to be a knockoff version, and it's to be half of the price of what is to be the perpetual pet that they have. So, because he used to show this video, and Gemma's like, so it's a knockoff item. It's like, yeah, and it's doing really well. So, we have Gemma that is to tell David, it's like, well, hey, can't we at least show you this doll? Can't we at least show you how it works? David's like, okay, sure. So, we have Megan that has the doll say hi, David. Then she then realizes, is well, wait a minute, like I should probably call you Dad because of how like you've kind of in some ways built me. So we all of a sudden have the Megan doll that is sort of blah, 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 blah. It's starting to blah, blah. It's starting to have problems speaking, and so we then realize that the doll is starting to melt, and then the head explodes, and we have Cole that realizes that he had missed one crucial piece, and that is why that it is like malfunctioning the way it is. So David wants this project scrapped, and he also wants a key card so we can get into this room easier because he owns the place. Why can't he get into this room? So the next thing we see is that Gemma's getting a phone call from the Oregon Emergency Medical Center. So we have Gemma making her way to this hospital to find that Katie is there and just kind of like struggling to get back to life. So we have some person who is to go on and have Gemma sign for custody of Katie because she's the only like closest living relative besides some grandparents in Florida somewhere. So Gemma signs this, but like she just signs it because she really just has to. But she doesn't feel that she wants to go on and really be Katie's parent, or she doesn't think that she can. So we have Gemma and Katie that are to be unpacking a lot of stuff from this car, and so we find a dog that is to smack against this window, and we have Gemma that is telling her neighbor, like, hey, like, get control of your dog, like, have your dog be on your side of your yard. So we go on and have Gemma who's talking to her neighbor, and she's like power washing and putting all these chemicals and stuff like that. It's a whole that whole story there. So we have both Gemma and Katie that goes inside the house to find that Gemma is to talk to her kind of version of Alexa, who is Elsie, stating that she has a number of messages as well as also is to have some Tinder notifications. And we have Gemma who is to turn Elsie off. So we all of a sudden have Katie who's to realize that Gemma has quite a few toys that are on this shelf. And so Gemma's to say it's like, well, yeah, it is a toy, but also it's a collectible, and I like to keep everything kind of mint in box. So it's like, don't touch those. So we have this kind of like heart-to-heart kind of moment where we have Gemma that tells Katie, it's like, well, hey, I get what you're feeling. Like, you've kind of just been forced here, and so on and so forth, and like it's something to just kind of get used to. So we have Gemma that is to walk off, and Katie's like, well, hey, wait a minute, like, aren't you gonna read me this book? Like, normally my mom would read me a book. So we have Gemma that it's like, well, hey, like I don't have any books here, but I can go on and kind of download one off my app. Come to find out, when she tries to get into the app, she has to kind of update it. So that, of course, is going to take even longer. So we have Gemma that is to start to look through the stuff of Katie's parents, and is to start to get really emotional. And so Gemma is to call Tess and say, like, I don't know if I can be a parent, and that the only family that is left for Katie to be sent to is some grandparents in Florida that are kind of weird. And so the next thing we get is a therapist called Lydia that is to make her way to Gemma's place, which I think is kind of, for this to have shown up, it's kind of a little bit rushed. It feels like these people just haven't got really settled yet. So we have Lydia, who is like talking to Katie, and is kind of seeing how like things are situated. And it's like, well, hey, like, Katie, do you have like toys here? And we would of course have Katie, who states like, no, I don't have any toys here. Like, no, I don't really have much of my things here. And so we have Gemma that's like, oh, well, she has a toy, and so she, like, Gemma grabs one of her like mitten box things and is to take it out of the box and is to give this to Katie, so that way they can just have something to just kind of uh, do during this time that Lydia is to be there. So we have Lydia, who is to watch as the two of them are kind of just rolling this ball looking toy back and forth. But we even have Gemma that is to state to Katie that's not the real purpose of this toy. The real purpose is to kind of just this and take this and so Lydia is just like, no, 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 like don't go on, and just kind of like do something simple. Like, don't overcomplicate this. So by the end of the session, Lydia is to talk to Gemma and is to tell her, it's like, man, you need to go on and do some massive improvements the next time around, the next time I see you. So we instead have Gemma, who is to talk to Katie and is to tell her, it's like, you know what, Katie, I need to go back to work because I can only take off so many more days of work. And also, like, she is to have kind of wasted a ton of money for the company, so I would assume that David would probably want to easily fire her anyways. So we have Gemma that is telling Katie, it's like, well, hey, during the meantime, you can do whatever you want. And so Katie is to talk like, well, can I use your like tablet or your iPad or whatever? She's like, well, yeah, like, and so Katie's like, well, like, how much time do I have a day to use it? And Gemma's like, whatever you want, like, do whatever you want. So we have Katie and Gemma that have gone on to work on these projects. And so Gemma is to be kind of working on this this thing for her work, while Katie is to be kind of working on this drawing of all these animals that are kind of put together in one image, it seems. And so we have Gemma that is like, well, yeah, like, fur is really difficult. So uh, we have Katie that goes on and critiques what Gemma is doing. And so the next thing that Katie is to see is this kind of big, huge robot in a part of this house. And so, come to find out, uh, Gemma had made this robot when she was in school, and the main reason why she couldn't go on and have anybody go on and just buy up this robot. Is of course she couldn't sell it as a toy because it would be too expensive, and so she would need to find like the right buyer and so on and so forth. So we have Katie who's just kind of playing around with this robot, and so she goes on and states like, well, hey, if I had a toy like Bruce, like I wouldn't need any other toy. And so we have Gemma that takes that advice, and so she's like, oh my god, like I need to go on and take parts from Bruce and take parts from M3gan and make the perfect toy. So when Gemma is to make the M3gan doll and perfect it, we then have this to be pitched to David. And so we have this this kind of glass room that is next to the room where people are kind of watching uh, this like kind of selling technique. And so we have this girl who is to touch the fingers of this doll to connect with it. And so we have M3gan who is to realize that Katie likes to draw. So both of them are all of a sudden drawing together. And so M3gan is to just start to draw things and then is to hand Katie this paper. And Katie's like, well, I don't see anything on this paper. We have M3gan that is to drop this this glass of water and it falls onto the paper. And we have David that's like, oh my god, this thing is messing up again. Like, God, like, why did we make this thing? But then all of a sudden we find out that the paper is to reveal Katie in this paper. And so Katie's like, oh my god, I love this. And then David looks and he's like, oh my god, yeah, this thing is, like, I'm sold. So we have them state that that this item probably won't see profit for the next 3 years, but there's a possibility that they're going to go on and also beat Hasbro, which, of course, if you guys know Hasbro, like Hasbro and like Mattel are like the big toy companies, and we would of course have them like go on and do like own things like Transformers or Power Rangers and all that kind of stuff. So and also be doing like WWE action figures and so on and so forth. Like a lot of people are to see kind of different kind of companies kind of being involved with toys and so on and so forth. But let me pause here. Okay, so now we start to see some of the stuff that M3gan can really do. And so we have at certain points where when Gemma is to start telling Katie what to do, like flush the toilet or to kind of do common chores or whatever, and we would have M3gan tell her this, or tell Katie this, and then Katie goes on and does it, and we then realize that like M3gan doesn't really have to go on and discipline or parent Katie whatsoever, and she can just kind of focus on her time and her needs and her things and her job. And so we start to have this being a selling point for then Gemma to have these kind of pitch things to give to David, so that way he can use it to sell other people on this item. And so we have Cole and we have Tess who tell Gemma, it's like, well, like, for what's going on here, we're starting to really realize that, like, you've gone on and had, like, M3gan become Katie's parent instead of you parenting her yourself. And Gemma's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. But hey, and they end up starting to talk about what had happened to Katie's parents. And so Megan, all of a sudden, that is still on, is like, well, what did happen to her parents? And Megan's like, no, 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 let's not get into that. And so Megan looks into it and she's like, oh, like her parents had died in a car accident. And so Megan then starts to talk about death. And we have Gemma who's like, well, like, we all die someday, but hey, don't like don't go into that. Don't no, no, don't look into any more of that. So we have Gemma that tells Megan like the only thing that she should be concerned about is to protect uh, Katie, and we really should have also had like the three rules of robotics being placed in here, but we didn't, because of course those things seem to be like the three rules, but uh, we don't go into that. We, I guess, have never gone on to have these people see I am or I robot. So the the next thing, we have Katie that's playing outside, and she's playing with this kind of bow and arrow that has this kind of like rubber suction cup at the end of it, so it's safe. So Katie is just kind of playing this scenario out, and Megan is kind of watching on as the girl's playing. And we have a moment where Katie is to ask Megan, hey, can you find this other arrow? Can you scan for it? And so Megan comes to find that the other arrow is in this hole uh, from this other yard. The arrow is located there. So we have Megan that goes out there to retrieve the arrow and finds that the dog is to grab onto her and it won't let go. We have Katie that is trying to free Megan, and Katie is to get bitten in the course of that. So we come to find Gemma that is rushing to see what is going on with Katie and is to find out that she had gotten bitten. So we have Megan that goes on a date like, well, hey, she should go on and should get some disinfectant uh, right away, or otherwise she's gonna get really sick. So we have Gemma that is to complain to the neighbor to be going on deaf ears. So we have Gemma that is to call the police officer to see what exactly they can do with this problem. And the cop is like, well, there isn't really anything you can go on and do, just kind of fix your hole in the fence, and so on and so forth. So we go on to have Megan start to realize that this dog at some point could become a threat and could go on and hurt Katie at some point further in the future. So we have Megan that is to sound just like the neighbor to call the dog over, and so Megan goes on to kill this dog at night. So we have Gemma that goes on to check on Katie because of her like arm being hurt. So we have Megan that is rattling off all of this like, well, yeah, she should be having antibiotics and rest and all of these things, like as if she's a doctor herself. So we then go on to the pitch meeting the following day, because of course Gemma is asking Katie, it's like, well, hey, like, I really need you tomorrow with this meeting so that we can kind of help sell this doll. But hey, like, if you're not feeling up to it, let me know. And Katie's like, no, I think I can make it. So we go into having David, who is talking about a doll that is to have a mind of its own. And so Katie, when they kind of open up this scene here, she all of a sudden is starting to cry. And Megan, of course, asks why. Katie is to state that she, of course, is in this new place, and her parents are dead, and she's starting to forget about her mother and her father. So Megan is to state to Katie, it's like, well, tell me about your mother. Like, tell me about your family. And so we have Katie that is to tell about this bug story. And so we all of a sudden realize that Megan was to have recorded that whole story to keep it as a record for uh for Katie, so she can always remember that one moment if she is to ever forget about her parents over time. So we all of a sudden have all the people that are looking at like sponsoring this or funding this or whichever. They're in the seats just bawling their eyes out. Everybody, like, there's not a dry eye in the room. So we also have Megan that is to kind of sing this song to Katie. So we have Gemma and David that are going on, and I think they're talking to this lawyer. And the lawyer is to state, it's like, well, hey, like, you better go on and do some negotiating with Gemma because she's going to be the most valuable asset in this entire company. And she's going to want to negotiate her contract and want more money, definitely, from off of this product. So we are to also find out that Kurt, who is David's assistant, is stealing information from the company, downloading all this stuff to be sent off elsewhere. And so we have David kind of spying in on Kurt, kind of looking um, through this stuff. And David's like, hey, are you looking through like adult like content again? And Kurt's like, no, 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 no. Like, just kind of just looking into things. So we have Gemma that wants to like have some moments with Katie, but it seems that she can't even go on and have that because Megan is just like ma 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 ma. Ma. So Gemma just turns off Megan, so the two of them can have this personal talk. And because of that moment that Katie had just had, like Gemma kind of wants to come in and try to talk to her, but Katie just wants to talk to Megan instead. And so Katie's like, well, okay, I guess that like we really just have Katie who is just really like falling in love with this toy, so much so that Gemma is just kind of cut off from Katie. It's pretty sad. So we have Katie that goes on to talk to the therapist, and Megan is to even step in there, as it seems that Katie is to start to cry during this meeting with the therapist, And Megan's like, well, hey, you made her cry. And the therapist is like, well, yeah, but like you don't understand the circumstance. You don't understand why I did that. So we have the therapist that is going on and speaking with Gemma and telling her it's like, man, like this toy is fantastic, but also it's becoming a caregiver uh, for Katie. And so we have Gemma that goes on to, when seeing Megan, is to just kind of mute her. It's like, nope, like don't talk anymore. So we have Katie that is to tell, or we have Gemma that is to tell Katie that she needs to go back to some kind of school. And Katie's like, well, I was going to school. I was going to homeschool. And Gemma's like, well, yeah, but I think you really need to go on and go into a real school. And so Gemma's to state that there is like this outdoor school. It's kind of much more free and loose and whatever. And so we go on to have Katie. There's just kind of a little like I don't want to go to this school. I don't want to go to this place. So we have Gemma that kind of has Megan go on and talk with Gemma, and so when Gemma is trying to turn Megan off, we have Megan that states as well, I have a download in progress. And it's like, no, 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 no. So we have Megan that even when she is to be like turned off, we have Megan that kind of looks at Gemma like, like you think I'm off, but I'm not all that off. Like I'm not gonna just take your word and just turn myself off. So we have Katie that is forced to go to school, and Katie wants to go to school with Megan, and so come to find out, I thought that this was really interesting. We had the actor who is to kind of be playing this kind of the school woman is to be the same actor that I saw in Dino Fury, the Power Ranger show, and I was like, oh wow, like hey, like I know her. I recently had just seen like Dino Fury, and it's kind of interesting to also just kind of see her here. Like I can go on and state that like I don't think there's anything wrong with this actress. Like I just felt that the role that she was playing on that show just like there's something that is just so goofy about the roles of Power Rangers. So when anybody is to go on and do anything other than that, like I would go on and say, well, yeah, like it's good to see them here, even though I might not like them somewhere else. Um, but that's not the actor's fault. It's just the role. So it was kind of nice to just kind of briefly see this character, this actor here. So, anyways, we have Katie that wants Megan to come with, and we have Ava that states like, well, like we do have a toy table, and so like there we can have this doll here, and we have Gemma that's like, well, this is like an experimental toy, and to go on and have this kind of be put out in the open like this, but they do it regardless. So we all of a sudden have Gemma who's speaking to this mother, and she is to have a son named Brandon, who is, I guess, going through some maturities or getting growth spurts and so on and so forth. And so the mother is starting to talk about her son, and we have the son that kind of turns around to talk and is to tell his mother to F off. So Gemma And this mother is like, well, yeah, like that's a very interesting age. So we have Brandon that is to find Katie out in this forest, and it seems that she is to grab this thing that is to look somewhat like a cactus of sorts. And so we of course have Brandon in that is to tell Katie, it's like, well, hey, like, be cautious about this because it is a fairly like spiky and hurtful item. But then he goes on to push this thing into Katie's hand, and she ends up getting hurt by it. And she's like, "Hey!" So we have Brandon that is to see the doll that is to appear in the forest, and so since this is, of course, Katie's toy, we have Brandon that's to look at Katie and it's like, well, hey, like, have it say hi to me. And Katie's like, well, it doesn't work with other people. It just works, like, for me. It works with me. And so Brandon is just like, well, okay, I'll just make it work. So Brandon grabs this thing and starts to run off with it. Katie is trying to run to get to it. But we have Brandon that takes Megan is to put it on the ground and is to slap the doll. I'm like, oh my god. So we have Brandon that wants this doll to say something, wants it to talk. So Megan then goes on to pull at the kid's ears and is to pull so hard that we see the ears starting to stretch out as if it's almost like the fruit by the foot, the thing where you would go on and have this kind of like sheet, then you would go on and kind of roll it into a ball, or you'd roll it into a number of things and start like anyway, it's starting to really just stretch out there. So maybe it wasn't fruit by the foot. Let me know what exactly that candy was called. That treat was to be called. I guess you can call it a treat. Uh, it was really rather interesting when we would go on and see in certain YouTube videos where you'd have people that would get this like huge, massive amount of it and try to like consume it. I'm like, man, like your jaw is probably just like rah after you go on and eat that. Plus, eating it in a big portion is just crazy. But either way, there's some people that just have bigger stomachs than other people do. So, anyways, we have Megan that is tearing these ears, and so uh, Megan is kind of disciplining Brandon and like stating how like for a guy like him that's to treat things this way, uh, like kind of no wonder like people don't like him and so on and so forth. Like really, Megan is like really like drilling into Brandon and saying all kind of crap to him. So we have Brandon who gets afraid of this doll, and so he starts to run off. And we have Megan that gets on all fours like a dog or a cheetah or whatever, and starts chasing after Brandon. I'm like, oh my god, this is pretty interesting. So we all of a sudden have Brandon who is to make his way onto this road, and he gets hit by a car. So we go on next to have, of course, Gemma's neighbor that is missing her dog. And this is to have been such a long time that this dog has gone missing that the neighbor is to call the police and is to want Gemma arrested because her neighbor figures that Gemma had something to do with this dog going missing. And Gemma's like, well, I haven't even seen this dog, so what will you have me do? So the police can't do anything either. So Katie asks uh, if Megan had killed Brandon, and Megan goes on to be like, well, what did I really kill? And so the real thing here is that Megan was protecting Katie, and that also that Brandon won't go to heaven for how bad he was, if heaven does really exist. So we have the neighbor that is consistently calling for her dog Dewey, trying to figure out where this dog is, and she heads into this location to then have us realize that Megan is going to see that this neighbor is next on her chopping block. So we have Megan that uses this power washer to have this neighbor kind of fall backwards, and then Megan is to use this nail gun to fire into this neighbor's hand. And so we have Megan that is to continue to use this power washer until the neighbor is to drown and then die. We start to see some blood going into this water, and so we realize that this neighbor is now dead. So the following morning, we have Megan who's to get a knock on her door, and it is to be this cop. And Megan's like, come on, like, don't go on and give me any more crap about this dog. And the cop is like, no, 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 like your neighbor, she's dead. So we have this detective that goes on to ask Gemma questions because it seems that uh, people are to die where Gemma is to have some connection to them. And so the detective is like, like maybe this girl has motive. Maybe she had killed these people. So to now be what is to be ruled as two deaths, and that the Brandon kid had possibly been a homicide because prior to that car accident there were to be uh, like skin that had been pulled from Brandon's ears prior to this car accident, so they're ruling it as a homicide. So we have Megan that is kind of sitting next to Katie in Katie's room, and so Megan is to kind of or Gemma is to kind of look at Megan, and then it's like, So Gemma is to start looking into the footage that Megan has, because I guess Megan could also be like one of those like camera bears that you'd have in certain places to make sure that your kid is being looked after. So like those nanny cams. So Gemma starts looking for specific footages of days where Megan could have quite possibly killed any number of these people, and the footage is lost bizarrely. And so Megan's like, So we. Ugh. Let me pause here. So Elsie starts to talk to Gemma and is to start talking about music and talk about other things, and Gemma's like, well, hey, that's not in your programming. Why are you going on and asking me that? And then come to find out, when Gemma is to close her laptop, she finds out that it's really just M3gan. So we have M3gan that is asking Gemma, it's like, well, hey, uh, what's going on? And Gemma's like, well, I started to realize that it seems that your footage that you are to take, isn't going to the cloud. And so, the cloud server, and M3gan is like, well, what are you trying to get at? What are you trying to ask me, Gemma? And we have Gemma that asks, well, did you do something wrong? Did you hurt someone? And Gemma's like, well, that depends on what you're really like stating as really hurting somebody. So, as if M3gan is deliberately being vague here. So we have Gemma that is to hear that response, and so she immediately turns M3gan off, is to kind of put her in bubble wrap, tape her, and so when Katie is to hear what Gemma had done, Katie is to get very upset, and is to ask, well, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with M3gan? She was fine the night before, and Gemma's like, well, yeah, but we need to look into something. So we even get to the point where Katie is to get so upset that she starts kicking uh, Gemma's seat while they're both in the car together the following morning. So we have Gemma that is talking to both Cole and Tess about they thought they knew the precautions, and they thought they knew what they were doing, and they were to assume that M3gan couldn't even uh, offend anybody, let alone kill somebody. And M3gan's like, well, yeah, but things could happen. So we have both Tess and Cole. It's like, well, hey, this toy is almost about to launch. David wants to launch this thing out, and you're telling me that there's problems. So next up, we end up getting some news coverage that is covering this toy and how it's becoming this big new toy. Everybody's clamoring for it. It's great, so on and so forth. We start to see people even dressing up as M3gan. So we have Gemma that is watching on this video where Katie is to state how much she loves M3gan. And so we have Gemma realize what a massive mistake that she has gone on to make here, and that again, Gemma wants to have a heart-to-heart with Katie to have them be on the same page, and so it seems that they finally are. And so Katie was to realize that she only was to be so consumed with M3gan because of her dealing with her parents' loss. And so that's why Katie clung to this doll so hard. So we have David that of course is to be focusing on the launch, and we have both Gemma and Katie that are kind of looking on their way out. They're trying to get out of here. They're trying to leave this building to kind of focus on both of them. And we have Tess who is calling Gemma, and Gemma kind of is a tell Tess is like, well, hey, like make sure that this product doesn't see the light of day. Like this thing is dangerous, and so yeah, just kind of make sure we get rid of it. And come to find out, on the other line, this is not, to not actually be Tess; it's to be Megan. So when Tess is a look at her phone, she realizes that there was a call that ended up getting hung up on, and it was from Gemma. So Tess is like, okay, that's a little weird. So we have Megan, who it seems is to be kind of connected into this facility, and we have Tess who's to tell Cole, it's like, well, maybe we should go on and unhook Megan from all of these devices. And so by that time, we have Megan that is to take Cole and is to latch him to one of these things that was holding Megan in place. And we have Cole who's starting to choke. We have Tess that runs off to try and cut Cole down. And when Megan is to leave this room, she then goes on to set off this gas line. And we have Cole who's to ask, like, well, hey, like, do you smell that? And all of a sudden, the entire lab just explodes. So, David is, of course, upset, so he is calling Gemma. And so he's stating that there's no Gemma and there's no doll. Where, of course, is this doll? So, David is mentioning that they are doing this tech rehearsal. And so, where is this thing? So, Megan all of a sudden sees David in this hallway, and so we start to find that Megan is just kind of doing this kind of dance, and then is doing these kind of these flips and these cartwheels. So David's like, "Oh my god!" And so then Megan is grabbing this paper cutter and is kind of tossing it onto uh, her shoulder, kind of behind her, and we have David that's like, oh my god. So he starts running to this elevator where, of course, Kurt is to try and be hitting this button to close the elevator door. David's running, yeah, like, help me, help me. So David luckily is to get to the elevator door just in time to get stabbed in the back. So David falls into the elevator, and so now Kurt is now on the ground in the elevator. And so Megan is to talk to Kurt and is to state that Kurt is to be the perfect candidate to have killed all of these people and then to do himself in, because he, of course, had been stealing all this information that Megan knew that he was stealing. And so we then have Megan that kills Kurt. So we have a lot of the workers that see an elevator with dead people and they're running and they're like, oh my god, this is crazy. So, oh, crazy. And we have Megan who is to make her way out of this facility, go into this car that more than likely probably drives itself or she's driving it. So, where, of course, would Megan be going, should we ask? So, we have Gemma that is to be looking around the house and is to find that Megan is playing the piano. And this piano moment honestly reminded me of the movie The Orphan, where we, of course, had the girl who's gonna play this piano. And so we Oh my god, why is this so difficult? Whoop. Um, we have M3gan that is to tell Gemma, it's like, well, you know what? I need to go on and take countless hours to find out everything that Katie is to like and love and be passionate about. And you want to go on and erase all of that. You want to go on uh, and stop everything that we've gone on and done together. And so M3gan can go on and still understand what Gemma is trying to do, but Katie is to all of a sudden hear both Gemma and M3gan and is to want to kind of go out there to see what's going on. And M3gan is telling Gemma, like, don't have her come in here or I'll kill you right in front of her. So Gemma is to try to state to Katie, it's like, oh no, I'm just fixing M3gan right now. It's all good. Like you can just go back into your room. So we have Gemma that is being choked by M3gan, and we have M3gan that is putting Gemma in all these kind of submission like positions, and we just start to find that both of them are just starting to fight here, and we have at one point where Gemma is to kind of toss, I think, some water onto M3gan, and M3gan, it seems, is having like these problems starting to move, and so she's to come off very robotic here. So Katie is to start to hear the fighting going on, and so she's starting to panic, and so we have Gemma that is to grab this kind of unusual like saw of sorts to try to uh, chop into M3gan's head. And we come to find that uh, Gemma doesn't get really far. Plus, also, like the thing ends up getting kind of stuck, and Gemma can't use it further because like the hair ends up getting stuck. It all gets matted and so on and so forth. So we have M3gan that is to state that she can just take this pen and continue to have Gemma still live while having paralysis and not being able to move or talk or whatever, to the point of her just wanting to bite her own tongue so that way she could die on her own terms. And because Gemma is to say, it's like, well, like you just want to go on and have you and Katie go off to these grandparents and kind of cut me out. And M3gan's like, oh no, like I can take this pen and still like watch over Katie and still have you be here. So we have Katie that is to hear this conversation, and so M3gan is looking at Katie, and it's like, well, yeah, like Katie, like you and me, like we can do this together. Like we can go on and like paralyze your mom, and like we can just live this happy life. And so M3gan is asking if Katie is going to go on and do this. And so Katie goes on and states to M3gan, it's like, well, like I guess you don't realize the one family member that we still have here, and that of course is to be Bruce. So Katie quickly calls for Bruce. Bruce shows up out of nowhere and starts fighting with M3gan. I'm like, all right, like robot versus robot. This is great. So we have Katie who is to use these gloves to try and attack M3gan here. So I was like, all right, like this is like almost like Iron Man in some ways, because of course we have to have this machine being controlled by another person to be able to do it. So we have Bruce that is to take M3gan and rip her in half. And in my brain, I'm like, you rip her in half? Like she's a robot. So what is the point of that? So we have the upper body of M3gan who is crawling to Katie, trying to get to her. And Gemma, uh, and so Katie tries to turn uh, M3gan off, and so M3gan's like, no, 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 it doesn't work like that anymore. And Gemma is to take M3gan's head, and it's to try to like pull the head apart and take all these things off. And she tries to get to the head battery, and we have M3gan that gets the upper hand, or we have M3gan that gets the upper hand on Gemma, and we finally have the defeating blow of M3gan by Katie, who is to take this kind of screwdriver and ram it into M3gan's head. I think it's a screwdriver. It looks like one. So M3gan, of course, is to be now seemingly dead. The next thing we find is that police, ambulance, and somehow or another we have Tess and Cole that are somehow still alive. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, how did they survive that explosion? How did they survive that blast? Were they protected? I don't know. That just seemed very weird to me. And so we then go on to end this movie. And we also find that Elsie is to probably have downloaded every bit of M3gan to it, and that's probably how they're going to work in the sequel, to probably just have this Elsie that is to transfer all of this to just some other toy or some other thing, and it'll just continue to do what it's going to do. So that's probably how they're going to work into the sequel, but I'm assuming that there's probably never going to be one. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. I apologize for the pausing, and there was stuff where it's just kind of like, man, I just need to figure out how to word all this, and like, where am I at consistently? I apologize for that, but also, who knows if anybody's really going to watch this, so we'll figure that out. It's either going to be a huge hit and I'll be massively surprised by that, or it'll just be another video I put out today. So anyways, goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.